Fine, thank you.
Good. We are at the Business Climate 2011 conference, and talk to us about what you're speaking about today.
Well, I was on a panel looking at policy and climate change and renewable energy and so on. So it was an interesting panel where we were looking at what role policy should play and how it's been evolving.
And what role should policy play? Is there a larger role it should play, or should the market drive it?
Well, I made the case, and I think most of the people, but you might speak to them what they thought, but basically policy is very important to create some, particularly initially kickstart the interest of business and investors, to create some important frameworks for them, particularly when things like renewable energy need incentives still. So policy has to play an important role, and there are some regulations that that sort of make sense in the energy efficiency markets, maybe in the car fuel efficiency and so on. So there are certain areas where it seems to make sense to really regulate, other areas where you need some incentives to get started. But what's very important, I think, is that policymakers can see that it's having an effect, that in the end the incentives will not be needed because the business sector is taking over, the costs are coming down of those technologies that are being incentivized and so on. And I think that is the case, that we can see some light at the end of the economic tunnel. And I think that's very important.
And if there was one policy that you think would really jumpstart the renewable energy world, what would it be?
Well, I really am afraid it's not that easy. There isn't. I mean, if someone said, oh, is it a carbon price? For renewable energy, that's hard to say because the carbon price would have to be very high for certain technologies. So they tend to be more technology specific. Certainly in a global sense, we've always liked feed-in tariffs that are very responsive to market developments in terms of costs and volumes, as in Germany. But nevertheless, there's some controversy around those as always. And so there's the cash grant in America, and the ITC and the PTC, these policies that people use. I think the key, we've always said you need transparency, longevity and certainty. You need to know, really understand what the policy is. It needs to be long enough to count over the life of the technology that you are trying to incentivize. And the certainty has to come to know that the payment stream is there in a way you can calculate. So, whatever it is, you need what we call TLC. But as I say, these things don't have to last forever. I think the costs of solar and wind and geothermal and hydropower, these costs are coming down, and I think that's really good news that the policies are being effective.